Hello and welcome to the Irish Hunting Podcast, the no bullshit podcast for the outdoor enthusiasts. If you're into hunting, fishing, fine wines and even finer foods, you've come to the right place. So pull up a chair.
Hello and welcome back to the Irish Hunting Podcast. This week it's all about horses. We welcome into the studio Chris and Sarah Brady, Ireland's only certified Parelli instructors, to talk about their lifetime of experience in horses, horsemanship, horse psychology, and the links between both our communities. Enjoy this one, folks. Chris and Sarah Brady, welcome to the Irish Hunting Podcast. Thanks a million for taking the time to join us here.
Oh, well, it's great, guys. Thanks very much for inviting us on. We're absolutely delighted to talk to you this evening.
Myself and Robbie actually just had a chat en route down. We were saying, obviously, the Robbie's heavily involved in the dog training, and you guys obviously are in horse training, and the two communities are probably interconnected in many different ways. I'm very, very new. Apart from my grandfather having the odd flutter and me being partial to that, horses wouldn't be my forte. Love looking at them. Love seeing them in their natural environments and so on and so forth. But I suppose from a newbie perspective, tell us a little bit about what you guys do and how you got started.
Super.
Sure.
So we're there. First of all, hi, I'm Sarah Brady. I'm 3-star Parelli professional based in Sallins, County Kildare, and this is Chris Brady.
Also 3-star Parelli professional.
Okay. And where there's horses, there's usually dogs. The two kind of tend to go quite, they're quite linked and go hand in hand. So it's not surprising that there's a new wave of understanding of what dog training is and also what horse training is in Ireland.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So go on.
I suppose on that, Sarah, like there's you're correct with the dawn of social media and so on. We're finding there's new methods, new tips and tricks, and I suppose bring us right back. I suppose at the start, how did you and Chris, how did you both get involved in horses? Bring us right back. How did it start?
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Tallaght. And Tallaght was a different landscape 50 years ago. I'm 54 now, so I grew up in Tallaght. So the back of my mother's house in Tallaght would have been cornfields and fields for miles. And over the years, the travelling community used to leave their horses in the back fields, and we used to go ride the travelling community's horses. And I just loved horses from a very young age. I probably took my first formal riding lesson when I was about 8 years old. When my dad brought myself and my couple of brothers down to Green Hills Riding School, and following on, I worked in different yards around North County Dublin. Not North County Dublin, around South County Dublin. Just mucking out, riding out horses for hunting yards, polo ponies, and I was just that traditional background in horses. I just kind of fell in love with horses. It wasn't until Sarah and I met in our kind of early mid 20s that both of us.
Early for me.
Early for you, mid for me.
just
Good to get that one in, Sarah.
Always, never miss an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so one of the common things that brought us together really was horses and our love of horses. Sarah grew up on a farm with horses, and she'll tell her story. But the first thing we did when we moved back here was we bought a horse. And quite quickly we realised at that stage that we kind of, although we knew a lot about traditional horse training and horse methods, we quite quickly ran into problems with with our horses. So that's where we found this kind of more natural approach to horse training. So I'll let Sarah kind of tell her story. And
Absolutely.
we'll talk a little bit about that.
So, as Chris said, I grew up with ponies. My brother and two sisters had ponies. But by the time I was kind of old enough to get one or look for one, my mother was sick of being a groom. So the horses were sold, and I begged and pleaded for another, say, 3 or 4 years, and eventually kind of twisted my dad's arm, and I ended up with a little black and white Shetland pony. Well, I'd say it was probably a little bit bigger than a Shetland pony. And I rode that on the farm for a solid year with no saddle. I didn't have a saddle small enough to fit it. I did have a bridle, so everywhere I went at 100 miles an hour. And I actually did a lot of kind of prepping for hunting at the time. So the next pony I got, I actually, that pony I did take hunting quite a bit. And it's funny now when I look back on it, with regards to the training we do, I realized why my frustration levels used to come up so high with that pony, because I didn't really understand how he viewed the world. And more often than not, we weren't a great match, if you like. So then anyway, fast forward, college, met Chris, and then we had a couple of years of a break of horses while the kids were small. And then when we moved back to Salins, got a horse, and we very quickly ran into problems. And the solutions that people were giving us were really kind of unethical. And they were not things we were prepared to do, really. So we gave that horse back to the rescue because we were really overhorsed at that point. And then took another just short break to have Ella. But as soon as Ella was born, it was back to horses. And then again, we ran into the same problems again, slightly different problems, but we still had no solutions. So that's when, thankfully, we found the Parelli program. And at the time, there's a show, and I think it's still around, Horse and Country TV. And they used to show a lot of videos of Pat Parelli and his wife Linda Parelli, and they used to do tour stops all around America, and there was one in England in particular. We watched that, and oh my goodness, that was us. You know, when they did a problem solving section, and they brought out this guy with this wild horse, and we were like, that's what we have problems with. And within 10 minutes, he had the problem solved. So we were hooked. We were hook, line, and sinker, and it was just before Christmas. So guess what Chris got for Christmas that year? He got the whole learning library from Parelli.
The whole enchilada.
Yeah.
I suppose from my perspective, I work with Chris, and I've had numerous conversations on different topics in regards to horses, and I find it contagious, the amount of passion and stuff that he has about it. And Sarah, just in case he hasn't ever told you, he always sings your praises as even known more. So when we asked Chris on, we said, is there any chance we could get the two of you? So I just want to, and one
That's
other
going to
thing.
cost you 50 quid now, Chris.
Chris, you owe me money.
Oh, there you go.
No, but, one other thing is, only good things come out of Tala, Chris, and you don't look a day over 36, buddy. All right?
Thanks very much, mate.
No,
Loving it.
so could you tell me a little bit more about the Parelli methodology and the mindset? What is different about it?
Yeah, sure. So it's really steeped in equine psychology and horse behavior. So your kind of more traditional methods that that Sarah alluded to, like when we had a particular horse that he started rearing, and really I was the type of rider. I was very confident. I'd ride anything. I would have been that guy on a yard that you say, "Oh, get Chris to ride it if it's a little bit difficult." But that particular horse kept rearing up and flipping over, and I didn't have any answers to solve that. And traditionally, you hear the word "pass the buck." That obviously came from the horse industry. So we asked for help. People were and the help that was offered was more kind of force, fear, and intimidation. Beat the horse into submission, tie him down, all of these things. None of which we were prepared to do. So, Sarah said, when we seen this kind of new approach, which is understanding horse behavior, really at the crux of it, um, learning how horses think, how they act, how they feel, how they play, and understanding people have personalities, and we talk about horses having horsenalities. So that's the basics. Sarah, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of people, when they ask me what I do for a living, it's just easier kind of sometimes to explain. I just use the term, I say, have you seen the film The Horse Whisperer? And they go, oh yeah. And I go, I do that. But it's kind of, that makes it sound a little bit mythical and magical. But actually the program we teach, it's very focused on teaching people and not the horses. The saying, teach a man to fish and or give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach him to fish and you feed him for life. So that is our ethos, more so that we are putting putting the ideas into people's head about how they can best get along with their horse. Now a lot of people really kind of tend to gravitate to this when they get in trouble with horses, which is a little bit unfortunate. It would be an awful pity if they didn't come a little sooner, before they had all the problems to begin with. And I can understand that in dog training, because my 2 dogs are a disaster. I just say good with horses, bad with dogs.
But that's a good segue, right? Because we mess around, trick around here with dogs. Is there any crossover between dogs and horses that your program could teach someone who's training dogs?
Yeah. So when we talk about what horses want, they want comfort first, okay? Or sorry, they want safety first, okay? So they need to feel safe. They can't learn anything because they're a prey animal, okay? And then dogs are predators. So horses are prey animals, dogs are predators. So they need to feel safe before they can learn anything. And then they want comfort. Okay, so they want breaks, they want to take it easy. And there's an awful lot of neuroscience around now about how the horse's brain actually works. So that comfort ties in a lot by giving them breaks, by giving them opportunities to assimilate the learning. And then food. So food is the last thing that we kind of use with horses. A lot of horse people are really anti using food, but we have no problem mixing that into the modality. And then we always say like that dogs and humans, we're predators, we're natural predators. So they want praise, recognition, and material things for people, and food maybe for dogs, or toys and things like that. So although one is a prey animal, one is a predator, it's getting our mindset away from some things that haven't really served us well in the past, or humans are natural direct line thinkers. So what we tend to do is we know what we want to achieve, but then all of a sudden, we go very directly to that, and we don't really take in consideration of how we could achieve that in a way that kind of builds the bond and the relationship with the dog and the horse.
Yeah, and I suppose we do talk a lot about it's a partnership and a relationship with the horse. And the partnership is it's a 51-49 split. Okay, so somebody has to be the leader in that. Somebody has to lead the dance, if you like. So it's very much a leadership. And I know from talking to Robbie about dog training, there is that kind of pack leader. Again, dogs are like that as well. They need direction and that. But we have, in training and training people, I mentioned earlier on about a set of principles. So in training, it's like 4 legs of a stool. So we would say you have principles, patience, sequence, and ambition. So we're very principled people in how we train people to train their horses, and I think go through the 8 principles. Yeah. So I'll talk about them individually, and I'm sure there's going to be huge crossover here to dog training if you guys want to jump in at any stage. So principle number 1 is horsemanship is a natural phenomenon. So what do we mean by horsemanship is natural? I suppose Pat came up with this particular methodology of training horses when he was traveling the country training people.
It's how they interact with each other in the wild, and how they communicate with each other. And they're very clear in how they communicate. And the system that we teach people is how to assimilate that and bring it into their training.
When you say when they communicate with each, sorry for interrupting, I just find this stuff fascinating. Is it
No
like
problem.
they hold space? They're aggressive towards each other. They stand
Yes.
on each other.
Yeah, so absolutely. We would call it a bubble, right? So they have a bubble around them that is their personal space. And that's what actually a lot of horses, when they're taking kind of leadership of it, they will claim space from another horse.
Okay.
Yeah. So like if we were looking at horses in the wild, the stallion is the one that will bring the herd where it's needing to go for water and that. And then the stallion will always eat and drink first. And then the lead mare will be second. And then it filters down through a kind of hierarchy. So we kind of like observe that. But also if you had a dominant horse and there was a horse drinking water and it walked over and moved that horse away from water, that's already asserting dominance. So as you said, like holding space. Also they're a pack animal, so they work off of energy and intention quite a lot. So they'll even notice like the smallest thing, like an ear flick. So if one horse is like kind of wants to move another horse, the first thing it'll do is kind of like maybe scrunch up its face and give it a bit of a dirty look. Then the next thing it'll do is it'll pin its ears, and then it might maneuver its body to where it's threatening, and then like finally it will follow through and bite or either kick. So we call those
like lads in a nightclub.
Yeah.
That's what it's like. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure in the dog training industry as well, people would often
signals.
Yeah, you're looking for
signs.
signals, you're looking for signs, and you're reading. We're full time reading the horse, the whole picture, the whole body language, understanding how they think, how they act, how they feel, and how they play with each other. And it's if we can act a little bit more like a horse than a human around horses, we get along way better with them. And I'm sure it's the same for dog training, Robbie. Maybe you're looking for those signs of a confident dog or a more dominant dog. I'm sure you have to adjust your training methods for that more submissive dog or a more dominant type of dog. Would that be the case?
Yeah, 100% you would. You'd have to tailor your particular style of training depending on the personality of the dog and what motivates the dog. But as you're speaking about the horses, there's huge transfer over there from horses to deer. Like you're talking about the lead
Yes.
female directing. That's what happens with the herd of deer. The dominant female brings them. If, for instance, someone shot a dominant female, the herd goes bananas and they can run onto roads. It's actually quite dangerous. So there is good crossover there, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I was just thinking there, that actually came into my mind just when we were talking there. And I'm actually, Robbie's transmitting some of his knowledge that he's obviously gained over the last couple of years, trying to transmit that to me. And I think what's probably coming across here very prevalent is it's as much about the as us learning how to do this as much as the horse is going to be the horse and the dog is going to be the dog. We have to try and learn a little bit more about them, I think. And I'm learning that as well. I know where I want to get with the dog. But as you rightly said, Sarah, it's not smooth, it's not linear. It's a set of steps and processes and like a stairs, and you have to go through each one and slightly tailor to the dog or the horse in this case, obviously.
Yeah. No, definitely, Anthony. And the thing about the program that we teach, as you said there, it is a step-by-step levels program. It's a bit like, you do maybe karate or something like that. You start off with your white belt and you go to your yellow, brown, blue, black, whatever that is. We kind of have that same type of system in the program we teach. So, and Sarah is very good at explaining all that. We'll probably do that later. But if we go back to the principles of training, so the second principle is make or teach no assumptions. So what does that mean? So in your training methods, like for instance, today I'm training a couple of young horses at the moment. Yesterday I had a really good session with both horses, and was very successful. Now, if I had started my session with that, I always start with a great positive, progressive outlook. But I'm not going to make the assumption that just because I had a good ride yesterday, that it's going to be a good ride. I go through my pre-flight checks, all in terms of getting my horse ready to ride, saddling, proper saddling, bridling, mounting, checking along, each step of the way that my horse is giving me green light so I can go on.
And what by green lights we mean like connection, and that it's willing, not just doing it.
And on that, I'm sorry I keep on jumping in, but let's say you're having a bad day with the horse. Do you decide to fight through that or stop? No, put the horse away. We'll take it up again tomorrow.
Yeah, no. So we have to say, you kind of observe, remember, and compare. So with every thing I ask the horse to do, whether it be follow a feel or, if I'm driving in a certain direction or ask him to do a certain maneuver, I'll give it a score. And really, my scoring system in my head is kind of -5 to a +5. And I'm not going to move on until the next task or next part of my plan until I get at least a 0. So what is a 0? 0 is where the horse is calm, confident, and obedient. And, sometimes, Robbie, that might be something simple like picking up its foot and picking out its foot. And he'd be pulling away the foot. I've spent literally hours with horses just picking up and placing their feet until I got that 0, because there's no point in you probably heard a lot about trigger stacking.
I was going to jump in with the trigger stacking.
When
You stole my triggers.
Well, you can talk about the science behind it.
Yeah.
But basically, if you have a brace in the horse, so that's showing up maybe if he's pulling away, or it's a brace in the mind. If you don't solve that right there and then, you're just carrying that brace on to the next part of your plan, and then that becomes another trigger stack and another trigger stack, and all of a sudden, 10 minutes down the road, you're sitting on your horse, and some people say, "Oh, I never saw it coming." But really, the minute you showed up that day, you went to halter him, he pulled away. You went to lead him, he stopped. You went to pick out his feet, he couldn't pick out his feet. You went to saddle him, he moved away from the mountain block. So, in answer to your question, yes, I would work my way through it kind of systematically and kind of solve it.
Yeah, and we have a great saying: develop forward, but work backwards. So we really, the program we teach, it's really to help people identify where they have problems, or we call it holes in their foundations. And a lot of people don't really realize that they have problems or they have holes in their foundations. So we try and kind of highlight, okay, that's a problem. You need to fix that. Because if you don't fix it, that's where the trigger stacking starts. So I use the example of, the alarm clock goes off in the morning. And you're like, oh, that's desperate. And then you go downstairs and the milk has gone off. So you have no tea. And it's like, no, this is awful. You get into the car, the tire is flat. By the time you get into work, you're ready to kill someone. So that is trigger stacking, basically. It's when things kind of go wrong, but they're small, but it accumulates to the point where it's a big problem. So what we do is we meet the problem where it shows up. So the first time, like, it could be even as simple as going out to the field and catching the horse. If the horse doesn't want to be caught, we go, oh, that's an issue. We need to solve that there and then. And then when we find with horses, and it'd be interesting to hear your input with dogs on this, but when you solve your problem where it shows up, the rest of your session tends to go a lot smoother, because the dog or the horse knows you're present, you're paying attention, you dealt with what was important to them, and then they're a much more willing partner. So I'd be interesting to hear if that transfers into dogs as well.
Yeah, it does. I suppose, would I try and work through a really bad session? Now, by no means am I an expert. There's people way better than me, but I could, depending on the dog. So if it's a female and she's in heat, I won't. I won't. I'll put her away. But if it's a dog or a female out of heat, yeah, I could bring it right. Let's say, for instance, I'm trying to do a blind retrieve. So that's simply where the dog can't see something, and I wanted to go in a straight line out to it. But for whatever reason, I know the dog knows it, but it's hesitant or it's unsure of itself. I'll just simplify it. I'll just move much, much closer. And I might even throw a dummy so it knows there's one out there. I'll send it for it. And then I'll take the dummy and I'll send it again without throwing anything. Now it knows, oh, this fella knows where the dummies are. He's smarter than me. Then I'll slowly move back away. So yeah, to answer your question, I can work through a session that's going terribly wrong for me.
Yeah.
But likewise, Sarah, I've also stopped and been tick and put the dog away out of tickness. No, I can't. But it's better than the alternative.
Better. Yeah,
it's better than the alternative.
Is. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. And we would often say and see that with people on their horses, and it's why a lot of people gravitate to what we teach and the program we teach, because frustration starts where knowledge ends. And we were at that point, I don't know how many years ago. With
nearly 20, yeah.
Now, my days of being frustrated around horses now are very, very, I can't remember the last time I was frustrated around a horse. I have so many kind of arrows in my quiver to deal with these problems that when a problem does show up now, I go, let me try this. And it's more fascinating to me now than frustration.
Yeah. But that's where myself and Anta would love to be with dogs.
Yeah, I'm definitely not like Rob is far ahead of me, but like that, my dog, my current dog is obviously new to me, and she's only a year and a half, and like that, it's more. I've found out definitely in the last year to 18 months, it's more about me learning how to show her rather than the other way around. She wants to do what I want. She's looking at me for approval and constant. But it's about, as like Rob said, it's to simplify it, show her what I require of her, and then we're both happy. She's coming over. Yeah, I've done this, and I suppose it's to get there. I think the frustration element. I've been there where I want this. I've seen dogs do this. Why can't I? Why won't my dog do this? But it was more about me rather than the dog itself. So
that's very interesting, because what that's brought us to is like our third principle is communication is two or more individuals sharing and understanding an idea. So how we use these principles is when things are going wrong, we go, which one is out of kilter? So yeah, that's a really good filter is that when things are going wrong, I'm like, oh, okay, hold on. Have you got the idea? Have I got the idea? Because it could be, in our case, it could be so simple as like, our body is pointed the wrong direction, or we are, when we're supposed to be relaxed, we still have our kind of our life up, or our what we call driving energy. That's the if you're sitting at the car, at the best example I can give is if you're sitting at the traffic lights and you're really late for something and they're red and you're like trying to will them green, going, that's a kind of when your life is up. And even in at certain instances where we're trying to get the horse to relax, but our energy is up too high. So that's a really strong filter for us, is to go back and say, okay, am I sharing the idea correctly? And are they understanding it? And am I understanding what they're saying back to me?
Yeah, Rob, you gave a good example. We were talking. You were telling me a story about your young lad training, and you were standing behind him. The dog wasn't doing exactly what he wanted it to do, but because you had that communication probably and relationship with the dog, you gave it a signal from behind. So that was a clear communication. Both you and the dog knew what was going on, and he I don't know whether you remember that, but that's a good example of two or more individuals. Doesn't have to be can be different species sharing and understanding an idea.
Yeah, very good, very good. I think that's the what you were saying there, like the thing I suppose I struggle with. I watch Rob now, and you were saying, you're looking in the direction that you want to send the dog. You were saying, Sarah, as well, going back to, you've had that morning of horrors, you've come out, or the day in work, and you're coming back and you're trying to train your dog or your horse, and you're coming with that kind of that baggage on the back, you know, and you know you want to, you've said no, I'm training my dog this evening, you know, I'm spending, and you're trying to tick the box, but you're not quite there, you know, you're going through the motions, and you're leaving probably signals, I would presume, that the dog or the horse is picking up, and probably feeding into.
I suppose I have this is probably a really silly question. Can they pick up horses? Can they pick up emotions or your energy?
Wow.
Very much so, yeah.
Very much
Absolutely.
so. So years and years ago, I had a young horse here, and she hadn't been backed yet. So she'd never had a rider on her back. And she was my horse. So I want, like, you know, we learned how to do this through the program. So I was out in the paddock beside the house. Now, the kids were small. They were running around the house, screaming at each other. I think Chris, God love him, was inside trying to get a bit of dinner ready. I'm about to get on this horse for the very first time. And then Chris came out the back door, and I said, oh my God, will you like just get those children to be quiet, right? And he goes, are you going to get on the back of that horse with that energy? And I was like, vroom. Once I recognized that it was there, I was able to park it up pretty quickly, because they really read our energy and our intention. And, you know, they're kind of thinking about, this thing is really angry now and she's going to climb on me. So thankfully I was able to drop that energy and like leave that kind of feeling behind. And I suppose over the years we've just got better at doing that quicker. Because sometimes I know, even with my youngster, I went to walk into her stable there like about a year ago, and she's quite a young horse, and she just kind of took a step back from me, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm coming with too much energy, and I just stopped, let some air out of my body, you know, dropped my shoulders, had a more relaxed stance in my body, and she literally dropped her head and started licking and chewing, and these are all the signals we're looking for to show that the horse is, you know, recognizing what that there's been a change, or that they may have learned something.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating to us. But do you go through a sequence to change your energy? Like, I know I'm asking really like remedial questions, but is there a sequence that you go through to go, right, this is what I do now?
Definitely. Okay, so if you think about like your belly button, right? It's the center part of your body, okay? And you think about when you I use the old example. If there was two lads squaring up to have a row outside of a nightclub, they're not standing at angles to each other. They're standing square onto each other, shoulder to shoulder. So first of all, we need to kind of turn our body just ever so slightly off of that line. And we teach this to people, like cock one leg, you know, just don't stand on two really straight legs, like cock one leg, or drop your hip, or even drop your shoulder, you know, and make your body less straight and kind of offensive looking. And then there's a huge science about breathing around horses as well. A lot of people get really breathe really shallow and things like that. So I suppose Chris and I can do it quite quickly and quite innately at this point, because we've played with it so much, but we actually teach that in our level 1 clinics, how to do that.
Wow, that's fascinating. Like, so like literally by as you rightly said, by being less authoritarian, essentially, when you walk in, you're not coming in, you're not showing them, you know, you're bringing the troubles of your day are left behind you outside the stable door, essentially, and you're coming in, dropping the shoulders. I think I look back and just as you were talking there, I'm listening to myself and I'm nodding away. I was saying every bad day I've had with my dog, you know, has probably coincided with a poor day personally. Do you know, you're coming in from you're rushing with the kids, you're coming in and you're kind of just trying to get through it. So
so there is crossover.
It's fascinating. Really, really cool.
Yeah, no, and again, if you think of horse behavior, like horses, they're precocial species. They feed into the energy of their herd, and they don't speak. You know, they're very non-verbal communicators. Really, it's all about energy, intention, body language. You know, when horses are moving each other, they give them, you know, they give another horse a, you know, kind of mean look, pin the ears. So it's very, very much about energy and intention, which leads us on to principle number 4.
Well, just to say that body language, that is principle number 6. So body language is universal. Yeah. So we've already hit that one on the head.
Okay.
Good.
So principle number 4, horses and humans have mutual responsibilities. So what we talk about there in training is, as a horse trainer, my number one responsibility is to act like a partner, not act like a predator. So what does that mean? What does partnership behavior means? Well, if I'm applying pressure to a horse, and at the basics of training a horse, it's all about pressure and release, whether that be rhythmical pressure or steady pressure.
And rhythmical pressure is like if you're pushing, like say, like pushing your hands towards the horse, like rhythmically, you know?
Yeah, or if I was
Okay.
using a flag or a stick and string just to put a bit of energy towards them to send them in a particular direction. So that energy is basically information. So how do I present that information? It's not really fair if I pick up a stick and whack a horse if he doesn't understand. It's not fair. I didn't deliver that information appropriately. So we talk about phases. So phase one would be, a very light phase. I'm not going to go into but it goes phase one, phase two, phase three, and phase four. And that's how we deliver the information. And that kind of helps me act more like it's more partnership behavior if I deliver that information more appropriately for the horse at its age and stage. Now, young horses, phase one will be long and slow, phase two, long and slow, phase three, long and slow. But as the horse gets more developed, those phases get quicker. So
Quicker and lighter.
Quicker and lighter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even
So,
your
and it-
terminology, what did you say? Phases and stages?
Yeah, ages and stages. yeah.
Ages and stages. That's very, very good. That even just rings a bell with me when I'm expecting too much of a young dog that's only new in. Ages and stages. I'm going to remember that. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure it's the same with training dogs. You're not going to probably, like, we refine as we go along. So my really, my top horses here, you can't even see the cues that I'm giving those horses, whether it be on the ground or in the saddle. They're almost invisible. Whereas where young horses I'm starting at the moment, it's very kind of spelling it out in big neon sign. Please, sir, step this way, go to the left. Where with my horse, I would just look. And I'm sure it's the same for dog training, is it? Where you would exaggerate to teach and then refine as you go along.
Yeah, so if I'm sending a dog to the left or right, at the moment, I'm actually taking a step to the left and right.
Yeah, again, body language, yeah.
Yeah.
But I also do that for two reasons. The lab is, I'm getting him now, I'm stretching distance. So if it's, let's just say, I'm going to pick a number, let's say it's 150 meters, he's away, and I want him to go to the left, I'm not so sure he can just see a hand, but he has a better chance of seeing my whole body move that direction.
Yes.
And then he
Yeah.
knows. So
Yeah.
is it the same? Yeah,
Yes.
maybe. I might get away with dropping the moving of the body and just finiting it down to my hand, but at the moment I'm using it all to give him the best opportunity.
And do you use whistles or verbal cues?
Yeah. So I have them all. When I start now, like I said, I'm no expert, so I don't want anyone getting on here giving out about me, right? But when I've trained them, let's say in the house with hand signals and verbal signals, then I move them onto the whistle. So they're all on the whistle. So I can get them to stop. I can call them back in on the whistle. I have a hunt whistle. So let's say I cast them out 50 meters. I stop him and then I cast him to the left, and then he's in the right area and the wind is right for him. So then I give him the hunt whistle. So now he's got to stop running and start engaging his nose. So yeah, basically, yeah, he's on a whistle. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's so cool because all I can get is sit and the paw.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's
come
not
out-
all
Come out
birds.
someday with us. Come out someday for the
will.
crack.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there just on that, like going back on your point there, Chris, like the is there a bond then between owner and horse, like that, and is that what would you say, is it exclusive?
Exclusive.
Yeah.
I would say yes and no. Yes, I definitely have my main horses here. There's definitely a bond here. When I go to the field and I call my horse, he'll come running across the field to me. Would he do that for everyone else? I'm not so sure. So there's definitely that kind of bonding and obedience with your horse. But
yeah, I would have that too. Like with my mares, if I go out to the field, my two mares will come over to me. Even like if they're out with two other horses, they'll always come over to me. Like they know I'm their person.
Yeah.
But like that as well, they know what I know. Thankfully, they don't know what I don't know yet, because I've been, with our training sequences, we've been able to stay ahead of that. They haven't figured out what I don't know yet. But I watch our horses with other people, like with working students and things like that. And my goodness, they sum up so fast what they know and what they don't know.
And
they
they
can
push
do
the
it.
boundaries.
They do it within 3 minutes. They know exactly what that person knows and doesn't know. And then they just go, "Oh, I'm not listening, you're fine." Or else they go, "Yes, ma'am." One or the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
would that be
it
the
goes
same
back
with-
to training the person as well as the horse. It kind of it's simultaneous then, and that does that transcend then. So say for instance, if you're, would you be what would you say? Would you train the person first, or coincide training?
Yeah, well, we would always say we're a people training program. So we have to learn with their horse. Now, sometimes we do take people and we'll allow them learn a certain amount here with our horses, but it's better if they have their own horse. But having said that, that's not always possible. But we will teach them, and straight away, like in level 1, we teach them body language, energy awareness. We teach them like basic skills to stay safe around the horse. And then we advance that. And you can't shovel it all in the one day, as much as we've tried. So
And just on that, Sarah, like you're a level 3 in this, same as Chris. How long did it take you to acquire, and how many years? We never even asked you how many years you've been doing this, and have you traveled the world? Have you?
Yeah, so we started in 2007, around Christmas 2007. We kind of were really, really addicted to the learning part. So we got licensed, we flew through the program, and we had a great mentor at the time. So in 2010 then we became licensed to teach the program, after spending time in Florida and Colorado. And then I went back and spent 3 months in Florida in 2011. Chris has been out to Australia, England, Colorado, Florida, anywhere else?
Germany, UK.
Yeah, we
The program is really it's taken us all over the world. I've started, and Sarah has started young horses as well on
Texas.
Some of those famous ranches you see in Yellowstone. You see you probably hear the 4-6s and
and the mule shoe horses. They were talking about those,
yeah,
and
we're talking about the Pitchfork Ranch mules. They're all ranches in Texas that are mentioned in that Yellowstone. And both Sarah and I have been there, started young horses, and it's been an absolute amazing journey with this program. It's an international recognized, renowned program that's studied by hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. And we have a working student program here. We actually have a Hungarian girl and a Swiss girl here with us at the moment. So in answer to your question, we've traveled the world. We say we have help, we'll travel. We help horses with people problems.
And is that it? Are you starting? Because I know you're retiring from your current job, Chris. Is that you putting the feet up, or have you got more plans to travel more with this? She's laughing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no. I've had an amazing career in the military over the last 31 years, and that's really helped me. Because Rob will tell you, we do these career courses, and you learn an awful lot about how to teach people. I was an instructor in a military college, and I was an instructor in an infantry battalion. So you learn how to teach people, and a lot of what we learned through this program was how people learn. Sarah might talk a little bit about that, but in the military, you learn how to be a good instructor and your method of instruction. But through this particular program, we've learned how to really how people learn.
Yeah.
Not everybody learns the same way. It's a bit like horses. Not every horse learns the same as another horse. So it's up to us to adapt our our methodology to the student and the horse and that particular relationship and partnership.
Very good. I think is there I suppose obviously there's other methods out there, and I suppose if somebody's coming to you with, say I'll take me for example, I would have learned bad habits because I would have been taking pieces off anyone I could have, you know what I'm saying, and not always the right, and I was bringing them back, and until you kind of find your way. So I'm presuming people come to you, and you have to probably try and unwind some of that. I would yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's the same with dogs, but definitely in horses, even just in regular terms, people would say when they run into problems, they go, we have to go back to basics, but that's what we teach. It's because it's a foundation program. It's about getting on with your horse and getting along with your horse on the ground, but also in the saddle. So you will have a lot of people who've spent a lot of time muscle memory wise teaching their body to do things that are counterproductive to that. So, but it's good because the program kind of is set up in a way that we are able to take someone who maybe has never ever sat in a horse before and start there, and then other people who are more advanced, we can still take them and find the place to start that will make a big change or a big difference. So, and there's lots and lots of methodologies out there, but what really sets the Parelli program apart, the one we teach, is that the use of psychology. And a lot of times I see in a lot of other programs that they are trying to train the horse before the person is taught how to do it, and that just gets messy. That's like letting me play with one of Robbie's dogs. Like, that's not going to end well. But you can get the paw.
I suppose on that, you said the fine motor skills people have built up over muscle memory. Just for the likes of me and Anto, could you give us an example of something that's counterproductive that you see regularly?
Yeah, absolutely.
Five things.
So a lot of people are taught like sit up straight on a horse, and what that straight away does is it hollows their back. And then they wonder why they have back pain, because when you hollow your back, your butt sticks out, right? And you open your chest up in a way that's not really useful. So what we say to people is, okay, we want you to kind of like lean forward a little bit and then like sit back, but like you're stacking your vertebrae one on top of the other, or else to pull their belly button back to their spine a little bit. And that will actually, and that's the same as Pilates, pull your belly button back to your
at
spine.
the same time
Start to sit here in the chair.
Start to suck in our belly button.
Suck your belly button back to your spine. And there you go. That's your Pilates engagement.
But everything I've heard, because my wife's family would have had horse, would have been sit up straight, elbows back, elbows in, elbows back. Like it was all very rigid.
Yeah, very rigid. And you see, horses can't move then. And we are supposed to move with them. Now, we don't want to be up there flopping around like a crazy person either. But you have to be like a ballerina up there in a way. You have to like hold your posture together, but be fluid and allow movement. So that's tricky because people, I mean, I've seen it with a lot of working students from Germany. In fairness, they're taught to ride. They're usually quite advanced coming from Germany, but what they are is very stiff. So we spend a bit of time loosening them up. And then people tend to rely on the reins for their balance. So they're hanging onto their horse's mouth for balance.
And what are you using? Knees, legs?
No, well, we're using our core strength, really. Okay. Yeah, core strength. And then also, if your posture is set up correctly, then you're kind of almost slotted onto the horse as opposed to sat on its back.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the big things we see all the time is people kicking their horse to get them to go forward. And you've probably seen the cartoon, where the little kid, and you see it in riding lessons up and down the country, all over the place. The little kid sitting up on the little lazy pony, kicking the ribs off him. The little kid is sweating, somebody chasing the pony behind, trying to get him to go. And the little fat pony just kind of
Doesn't want to go.
Putting in little effort, but kicking a horse to go or kicking a stubborn horse, there's easier and better ways to motivate that type of horse. And this is where the psychology comes in from our program, because some horses need motivation, some horses need focus, some horses need obedience, and other horses need what's the
Relaxation.
Relaxation. So there's 4 different distinct things there when you think of horses' horsenality. So some of them are introverts, and that's that little fat pony I'm talking about. We would categorize him as a left brain introvert.
Okay.
So we won't go into that because it's that we could we could get a whole podcast on that alone.
Give us a quick synopsis. Left brain, right brain.
So you probably have it with dogs as well. You have dogs that are probably quite extroverted and have a lot of energy to burn off, and they want to move their feet, and you probably have to kind of play a little bit before you can expect them to be quite obedient. Maybe bring them for a long walk or something, and then at the end of your walk doing a training session. So we have that with horses. We have extroverted horses. They need to move their feet before they can concentrate. And then we have other horses, and that what happens is they need to process what's happening before they move. So I always make the joke that my major life decisions have been made while I was out for a walk or mucking out horses' stables.
Yeah.
Whereas Chris needs to sit down with the pen and paper whenever he has to make any big decisions. And he goes, "We'll sit down now this evening and we'll." And I'm like, no. So I'm a little more extroverted and Chris is a little more introverted, okay? So that's the first thing to understand. And then we just look at how close the horse is in its nature to being a prey animal. So like being almost like a deer versus being like a horse that's in your pockets, is mugging you for treats and is too friendly, is trying to step on your toes, they're too, and almost towards dominant. So we teach people how to identify their horse, and then it's like there's categories. And what we find then is once they can kind of understand the horse, the system is an awful lot easier to follow, because once you understand your horse or your dog, you can naturally almost, tailor your program to them. So that's a big area of study, horsenality.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And I'm only after twigging right now, don't step on me toes comes from fucking horses. I'm after twigging that.
There's a few things there's after coming up. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I can't get this visual out of my mind. So especially when Chris mentioned the 4-6s, or Sarah, you mentioned, I think, and I'm a huge fan. I always have been since I was young. The kind of cowboys and Indians and the westerns and the horses and so on. And then you went back, kind of the analogy of sitting on the horse more kind of in a more natural rather than a more kind of a, what would you say, postural regal kind of form. And that when you look at those films, and I'm not saying it's as simple as this, but you look at the Indians getting up on the back of a horse, it looked kind of like seamless, that they were kind of at one with the horse. What I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know that's simplified, like a really, really simplified, but I kind of get that kind of feeling that you're trying to be more at one with the horse rather than
more natural.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because it's really not about submission and you hear this a lot around horses. You have to show him who's boss, and that one really kind of grates on me. I go, no, you just have to be a good leader.
Yeah. Good instructor, good leader. And now that you say that, and I'm not dragging you, do you want to finish the principles first?
Yes.
Before I drag you a different direction?
So there's another one. The attitude of justice is effective. Now that's a bit wordy, and even people who study the program sometimes ask me what that one means. But it basically means, and there's a good example to give, right? If say, for example, a horse, just comes a little bit too close to you, but it's very soft and they're not really pushing on your space, you can very softly ask them to back up, okay? But if, say, for example, there was someone here and their horse is running at them with the teeth bared and going to put them in hospital, I'm probably to react a lot stronger and a lot firmer then to keep that person out of A&E. Okay, so that's our kind of our balance of our phases. It's not fair if we have a lovely horse here, Safi, she's a real sweetheart. If she kind of walked into your space and you just like, I don't know, went at her with a flag or start waving a stick around her, your coat at her, oh my God, she'd be 3 counties over. You know, she'd be that would really upset her. But also if you have a horse that's like really trying to do you an injury, and I've seen horses go at people like, and they'll go for the jugular with their teeth bared. You know, there's no point then at that point going like just waving your fingers and hoping that that's enough. Like you need like a stick or something to like, you know, to just say, you know, make and it's not about whacking, it's just about making your space bigger, you know.
Rob, I know we had conversations about dog training, and you've seen the stick people, and you've seen the carrot people, we call them, you know, the treat people and then the stick people. Like, and you know, we've had conversations where, you know, I know you told me you've seen some guys kind of using methods that you wouldn't, you know, that you wouldn't use or I wouldn't use. And you know, based on kind of force, fear, and intimidation. But again, going back to delivering information, it has to be fair and just.
Yeah.
You know, if I just walk up to a horse and whack him on the head, but sometimes if that horse is coming, you know, with his teeth baring at me, you know, of course I'm going to whack him.
Well, it's anything to stay out of A&E. You know?
You know, you've got to be effective to be
when
understood.
you say that, there's a very small amount of people who do that as a regular thing. But in terms of horses, they're so big and powerful. They could do you a serious injury. Really, like I'm actually terrified of horses, even though I'm talking to you about horses. Just because they've a mind of their own. They weigh, I don't know, how much does the average horse weigh?
Well, my horse is up about 700 kilos at the moment.
700 kilos of 4 crazy hoofs and teeth that could hurt you.
Yes.
So, like, before you get in there and start playing, you'd really want to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you said there, we are still living in the real world. So, you know, we all have to go to work. We have to rear families and so on. If an animal, if it requires that, no more than if a dog is being forceful or showing teeth and stuff like that, you have to stop that.
You have to interrupt the pattern.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that principle just means that we have to read the situation and be fair and adjust correctly to like whatever phases we need to use with the horse. And then this number 7 is horses teach humans and humans teach horses.
Yeah, so that's a really good one, and I'm sure I don't know whether it's the same. We spoke about it a little bit earlier, but you know, we have some students here, and we allow them to learn with our horses because we you know, our horses are at a certain level. They're very high level. They respond really appropriately most of the time, given the correct information. So those horses, you know, I can put somebody up on my horse, and that horse can give them a really nice feel about how a horse should act when given a certain cue or command under saddle, and they get that feeling, and they can take that feeling then maybe home and try and replicate it with their own horse. So that's the kind of principle there, where horses teach humans. You know, we're not that, you know, autocratic, chauvinistic to think that horses can't teach us, that we could only teach them. So I suppose that's the essence of that principle.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
A lot of time, go on.
Absolutely, I think it does make sense in that we're the one that's trying to get up on their back, not the other way around. So we have to try and figure out, I suppose, what way they want us to do that. Do you know what I'm saying? And
I'll just be open to learning.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Nancy, would say, for instance, if I wanted to, you know, learn how to train a dog, would it be a good idea for me, say, to go with one of your established dogs, and you say, okay, you teach me the command, okay, so you're going to ask them for a retrieve maybe, and you're going to teach me how to do it, and then you
get the idea.
I get the idea, and then practice it on your dog. Would that work?
Like it can try, like as you rightly said there. Like I've seen where I've often been out where you know, before I had a range of what I would consider poor dogs, but looking back in hindsight now, knowing what I know, it was a poor poor handler, in that it was me. But like that, I've often seen lads, oh, sure, I have a couple of dogs, you take one dog, and there's no, what would you say, there's not a common thread on how to perform as a handler when using that dog,
Yeah. So I would have had first-hand experience with this, where I sent a dog away to be trained when I was 16. So a spaniel, and he trained the dog but never trained me. So he actually did a really good job on the dog, but he just gave it back to me. But I did not know what I was doing.
Right.
So I learned a load of bad habits. Now, for you, I could bring you out and show you what to do with my lab. Like he's 2 now. He's still young for a lab, but he might do it. He might not do it. He might stop and look back at me and go, "What are you asking of me? Because you've never asked this of me before."
Yeah.
Like, I can't actually answer that question. Like, he might not. But after we simplified it and he understood what I was asking of him, 100%, I guarantee within half an hour he'd be doing stuff for you.
Yeah. And we kind of like do it insofar as so that people can get an understanding about where they're kind of working towards, not that, or what is possible. When we look at like horses teach humans, but it's also to remind us that it's not just humans teach horses, which is kind of that direct line thinking, that the real predator thinking, only we're so supreme being that we can only teach them, they can't teach us. So it just reminds us to be open to the learning from the horse as well.
On that, Sarah, right? There's one thing I'm brutal at. I shoot something, it drops, and then it's called marking. I'm not great at marking where that has dropped. So I send the dog and I think it's in this area, but the dog has a much better nose than me and he's out there and he starts pulling off a different direction. I have to have less of an ego and try and hold the dog in that area and go, no, I have to trust this fucker.
Yeah.
He's telling me he's over here. So I get that as well.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, because we're asking them to do a job, so we have to allow them to do it too. Like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
very good.
Very good. And then the final one is principles. So this is our 8 principles. Purpose. So the purpose is that there's a job, or there's a reason we do this, not just for the sake of a maneuver. And then so principles, purpose, and time are the tools of teaching.
You want me to?
Okay, I don't mind.
So what that means to me, particularly the time element of it, it's a bit like, I go out to train a horse and I have a particular thing I want to achieve with it that day, and I have an hour to do it in. Usually when I go out there with that attitude, things don't go well. The horse, we would say, is in charge of the timeline. I'm in charge of, delivering the information. I'm in charge of being principled, and I'm in charge of, giving that horse a task to do, which is a purpose. But we would always say the horse is in charge of the timeline. They could take, I was trailer loading 2 horses out here this evening. The first one took me probably about an hour to work through. He's, horses, they're born cowards, claustrophobic, skeptics, and panic-aholics by nature in various degrees, depending on their innate characteristics, their learned behavior, their environment, their spirit. So one of them, very claustrophobic individual, didn't want to go into the horse box, and it took me about an hour, but that's okay. It just, we just went through the process with him, build his confidence in and out of the box, and he trailer loaded nicely in the end. The second horse walked straight into the box. Both of them have been through the same amount of training, the same kind of tools, techniques, but their personality lent to one of them taking a lot more time than the other. But if I had went out there expecting both of them to go in, straight off the bat, I'd have probably got frustrated. I'd have probably got, a lot of people get mean and mad around horse boxes because it's some of the worst behavior I've seen in horses and humans shows up around horse boxes because it's so frustrating. They're usually late for a show or and they've got to get him into the box, and it becomes force, fear, and intimidation, and that does not bode well with a prey animal.
And I have a question in relation to that particular scenario. Was the second horse in vision of the first scenario? What I mean is, did he manage to see it happening and go, "Oh, I understand," and copycat the first?
That can be useful. Actually, it can. Now, maybe not in this situation, because I think that the other horse, we did do a lot of work on him. He was here last year as well, and we did a lot of trailer loading. So he was like, dude, I know the drill.
Yeah.
But but we do a lot of using a bit of copycatting. So what we do is it's called ponying horses, okay? So you'd often see it, on the westerns, where one guy would ride out and he'd bring a spare horse.
Yes.
So that's ponying, right? So we do a lot of that with young horses, because the silhouette of someone on their back, of a person on a horse's back, they may have never seen that before, and they just think that's crazy. So you will see youngsters will stop and watch someone. Young horses will stop and watch a horse being ridden, and then we use the ponying to kind of get that horse used to seeing someone at that height and close proximity to where they would be sitting if they were in the saddle. So they do learn by watching as well.
And of course, you're introducing small enough, like similar to in our gig, where we say that you're throwing the ball first, then you might clap your hands, or you're introducing, rather than going out first day, 1st November, as shooting a shotgun over, and that's the first time they've ever heard of it. As you said, these are all new experiences for the horse, so you're kind of slowly introducing, rather than throwing a saddle on it and jumping up and expecting everything to go well.
Well, there's an old saying: you can shoot a gun off of any horse once.
Yes. That's the dream now, Sarah. That's my dream. I dream about that a lot.
But again, I would say, the last time you should ever go trailer loading your horse is when you need to go somewhere. That's part of our program is trailer loading. Is just to expose a horse to the possible, the probable, and the inevitable, so that when it comes to going to the show, it's not a big deal. That your horse just walks in calm, confident, and obedient. So that's the kind of time element of it there. The last principle there, principle number 8.
Yeah. And it's just something like, because this kind of baffled me for years. How does all of this training work with horses? And the thing about it is horses are naturally curious. Okay, they're naturally curious. We have a digger parked in the middle of the field this evening, and I'm sure that like all 4 of them now at this point have gone over to have a look. So they can only be curious though when they're confident. So curiosity is a great marker for me of how confident or unconfident they are. And if they're very hesitant about something, I just go, okay, you're just not there yet. We need to build your confidence. But that's why, like, horses and dogs, they're quite willing to please. They want a quiet life. They don't want hardship. They want to kind of do the job, get it done, and then go back and hang out with their friends. And they, and I've even seen horses that when you taught them a very like complicated maneuver or something like that, like you'd get a feeling off them that they almost feel smarter, didn't know that was possible, and they have a better kind of overall feeling to them, is what I suppose I'm trying to say. But that's why it works, because they want to learn. Horses want to learn, but it just has to be given to them in a way that's palatable.
And the crux of our program are there's 7 games that horses basically play with each other, and we teach people how to play those games. And you'd often hear our mentor Pat saying these 7 games they're your diagnostic tools, but they're also your prescription. So we talk about a friendly game, or which is basically building a horse's confidence in every area. Then
So, like, say shooting a gun, that would be for a dog. That would be building their confidence. So you might start off with something small, making a small noise, and then build it up to where you can actually shoot. Yeah. So that's that friendly game is how to break things down into palatable, bite-sized chunks for them, so that they can understand it and they don't feel overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, so and the next game we teach them is to basically follow a feel. So and everything you do when you're riding a horse is you're asking them,
You're touching them.
You're touching them with your legs. You're holding basically holding their reins with the bit in their mouth. You're touching them. So it's asking them to yield to and from steady pressure.
Which is the touching.
Which is touching, yeah. So, and the next game then is for your horse to yield to and from rhythmical pressure. So whether that's with your tools, whether it's a flag or a stick and string, or just, moving, energy towards your horse in a kind of rhythmical fashion, to send them in a certain direction.
And that's what they learn from their mothers. They learn the driving game from their mothers when they're born, because the mother will very quickly show them that the foal needs to come with the mother to stay alive, because they don't know that they were born when they're born. The mother's prey animal instincts are very high at that time, and once the foal hits the ground and is up on its feet, it needs to be ready to move. So she'll very quickly there and then teach it by using a driving game, and that's by affecting the area around the horse as opposed to actually touching it. So she might use her ears, she might use her tail, she might use her long body or her neck to kind of push him over or push him out of the way. So these are all what we call driving games, and those are our
very, very interesting.
Yeah. So they're the primary 3 games that we teach people, and the next 4 games are just a combination of those 3 games, and asking the horse to move in certain directions and over stuff, under stuff, around. And then we talk about patterns. We teach people, online, on the ground patterns. We say online because this program was established in 1982 when there was no internet. So Pat, called on the groundwork, which is basically your horse on the end of a lead line. He called it online. People get a little bit confused. Go, is that on a computer? Is that? Did we qualify online? Is it
got to play online with our horses?
The methodology then, like this program does, like, obviously there's different disciplines within horseman, like the horse universe. Does it transcend all of them? Like, is it? Yes.
Yeah, it's a foundation program. So it's the foundation. It's like the primary school education for a horse. If you think everyone needs to go through primary school and get to 6th class, and then, in secondary school as well, and before they go into college and start to diversify and specialize in certain areas. So you need that kind of primary school and secondary school education, and then you can be an accountant, or you can be an artist, or you can be a scientist, so that for us would be the dressage or the Western performance or the show jumper, or the eventer. So that's the university. But a lot of horses are just starting straight away at university level, and it's why there's such high levels of attrition and failure for them, because they don't really understand the job.
Yeah, they don't have the foundation.
They have the apprenticeship done. It's like sending somebody straight from primary school out to, there you go, start that job, wear that house or build that. It's not really fair.
Crazy. Yeah,
you're setting them up for failure, really.
Yeah.
I suppose to jump across to our world for a sec, and to try bring horses into our realm, have you ever had any involvement or seen the hunts? What's your thoughts on it? Have you ever taken part?
Yeah, I used to hunt when I was younger, like when I was a kid. I used to hunt, and back then it was just great fun, and just go, and you never really thought about, like, if you fell off or if you hurt yourself or that.
Yeah.
But then as I kind of got back into the horses, and with those problem horses, that was something that I did try to get back into. But the horse that we had, like, he just kept bolting. And the last hunt, not the second last hunt I did, I brought him through the gate, and I purposefully was like within the last 5 horses to go through the gate and pay my cap. But within 5 minutes, I was like the third horse on the hunt. He was a thoroughbred. He just raced past every other horse, and he was out of control. He was just running with the herd. But the flip side is I did have the grey horse that I had. Like, she was an amazing horse. I had so much communication built up with her and such a strong relationship that I knew if I brought her hunting, I wouldn't have had the problems I had, because she listened. She would always listen to me, and that's now the ethos that is transferring with my chestnut mare as well. So that's kind of, when you have a good horse that listen, nothing is a problem. When you have a horse that doesn't listen, everything's a problem.
Yeah, I suppose growing up, I used to go hunting. The lady who actually taught me to really ride, Jane Foley, and Jane still teaches young kids now. She's had such an influence over thousands of young kids from, all over, Tala and Kildare region. She has a place up here in Warrenstown. Not you probably pass it by going to work in the morning, Robbie. But yeah, and Jane used to take me hunting. I used to ride her hunters and her polo ponies. So I kind of grew up around that that discipline, if you like, and I loved it. And hunting is such, it's woven into the fabric of rural life. And I'd love to see it continue. Because like the horse industry in itself, like it's €1 billion industry. And we have traditional Irish horses here. We've a couple of foreign horses as well, but primarily we have the Irish draft, which would be the stable. If you look back, and one of the kind of mythical stories about the Irish draft and how it got its name during World War One, if you think the horses around that era, on a farm, they would have been ploughing the fields Monday to Friday. On a Saturday, they would have went hunting, and then on a Sunday, they would have had the horse and cart behind it, where they would have put their family on to go.
So they had to be strong enough to do the work Monday to Friday. They had to have the stamina to go hunting on a Saturday, and they had to be pretty enough to pull a cart on a Sunday. So there you go. There's the Irish draft for you.
Yeah. So and those horses were a lot of those were drafted into the British Army during World War One, and that's kind of, some people say that's how they got their name, but I think the breed existed long before that. But they're the type of horses that we have, and we've hunted. I had a black and white mare that I hunted here for a number of years with the local hunt here. During the Celtic Tiger years, things got a little bit silly, because everybody had money. Sure, every Tom, Dick, and Harry that could lease a horse showed up at hunts, and so your traditional hunt would be somewhere between 30 and 40 horses with
a normal hunt.
A normal hunt would have been about 30. Like, these hunts got so big, there were maybe 180 people.
There's 180 horses on the last hunt I did. Yeah.
So you can imagine 180 horses, and probably, a good third of those people riding on that didn't know the etiquette of hunting. They didn't understand why you hunt. They didn't understand, like, just being respectful around the land, and keeping to the headlands and respecting people's property, and it just got a little bit crazy around that particular era. I got badly injured on the last hunt I was on, due to just another rider, just inexperienced rider that just put me in a predicament where myself and my horse got injured, and that was primarily why. And it was in and around the time we found this particular program as well, which kind of steered us in a whole new direction. But I love hunting.
Funny enough, you were saying there, Chris, like that's I just go back to the draft element. Obviously, at the minute, right, there's huge kickback against our community in the hunting, and obviously the horse industry has seen its fair share as well over the last couple of years. A lot of it unjustly, some of it maybe warranted, but like, and I mean that on both sides, both ours and yours. But we can all do better at times, But like that, there's just this week, I think there's a bill going through or trying to be pushed through, for to ban hunting, horse and hound and so on. And like that,
Yeah.
there's a community there that a lot of people don't understand. It's not a case, and I think it's more than just people see it or are proposing it as, and I inverted commas, elitist. You just pointed out the very reason why it's not. It was back in the day. It was work, the Saturday hunt, and then the Sunday bringing the family to mass, or going out to the shop, whatever, the cart or whatever. So it was like it's far from that. It's not. And I've been to the hunts now, and like it was something that I didn't understand a whole pile before I went. There's a huge community there, like from kids right up to elder statesmen and women. It's a huge part of rural life, and I think from both our community and yours, if that was to be taken, I think
Yeah.
it's more than just a hunt we're missing out on. It's the
community aspect.
It is, yeah. It's a social. It's hard to explain that to people who are not from a rural background, I think, or from our background,
Yeah, and I definitely think the hunting community, and I mean like your community and the horse hunting community. There's nobody more when it comes to preserving wildlife and the rural communities, putting stuff back into that aspect of it. Like the hunting community are, when it comes to conservation of birds and wildlife, and there's nobody better than hunting community to bring that to the fore.
Yeah, and what's happened in the horse world in the last few years is there's a huge ethics now question over horse training, and like there are even like movements towards that, like horses shouldn't be ridden anymore. They're trying to come up with this is across the board. I feel all right, but the only thing, the good the good that can come out of it is that we look at how we're doing things and making sure that we're doing it for the benefit. And not like what Chris talked about, like in the Celtic area, anyone with 150 euros could show up and lease a horse and no questions asked whether they could ride or not, or, put their lives in danger. So
I think that's why they can't get insured anymore, Sarah.
Yeah, they can't get insured.
The insurance for a hunt is through the roof at the moment.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and like our local hunt had closed down because and like that was the hunt I hunted with as a child. That has closed down because of that reason. But we do need to kind of start to look at things and be clever, about it, and make sure that like we're not putting ourselves in danger and we're not putting our animals in danger. And the same with the dogs, because I'm sure you guys have heard like things that are unethical with dogs and hunting and things like that. And it's like, oh, hold on, that's not what we do. We're trying to
100%. And I think all of the field sports, don't get me wrong, right? We do huge conservation packages and fucking working with kids. Anto does a huge amount of that.
Yeah.
But there's a dark side to our sport.
There's a dark side to everything. Yeah.
So that's where I was going. Like there's poaching on our side. No, not our side, but I mean our sport. So
clarify that.
Yes.
There's a dark side to everything. And I did see only around the corner from us a documentary about horses. Do you know the documentary I'm talking about?
Yeah. Shanahan meets Saddle.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced or seen or like have you ever experienced the dark side of your sport?
Well, like we don't actually live too very far from there. Like I used to pass that bringing the kids to school. Like, and I grew up here. Like, so that place was going. Well, no, it wasn't on the Shannon side at that time, but since I was a child, that abattoir has been there. But yeah, this is where. I haven't, thankfully, since I suppose we stepped away from that world in 2007. Occasionally I go onto yards and there's things that I'm
You
they're
witness.
they're doing it in the best of the interest, and I'm like, but all I can be is a good example. I've learned that.
Yeah.
I've learned that the hard way. You cannot force your ethos or your methodology on
No.
someone. They have to be ready to take that on board. We've a great saying: when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. But like over the years, I suppose Chris and I didn't really do a whole lot of advertising or anything like that, because I used to always say, if they find me, they'll be easy to teach.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now people are starting to look for that. Like, and I don't know, in the last 5 or 6 years, our business has gotten, like, we were busy before that, but it has gone through the roof with people looking for a more ethical way to train. Like even just this last 2 weeks, I have a new student. She's a German girl. She was in Dublin, and she went out to a few riding places, and she really didn't like what she saw, and she wanted something more working with the horse. And then the boyfriend found us for her. So there is a movement towards better and fairer treatment of animals, and and regulation of the sport, I
I
suppose.
suppose it's an evolution in a sense, isn't it? Like we all grew up with no different than the dog world. We grew up with a kind of a set of, that was the way it was done, back in the day,
Yeah.
so, but now we know we have things now, as you rightly said, we've internet and science and neuroscience and psychology and so on, things that didn't exist back in the day. So while we always have to give a nod to the what would you say, the forefathers and the forebears of, because without them we wouldn't be having this discussion today. But we also have to recognize that there can be a better way. There can be a more evolved, a more intelligent, or a more in some cases, it can be simpler. It doesn't have to be a more difficult approach. It can be.
And like farmers, there's a saying in the farming community: if you have livestock, you have dead stock.
Yeah.
So, and we've had horses here over the years that we've have died on us, and we've had to have horses euthanized, and we've had to help people through that process as well. And usually, when it's come to that, we would bring our horse to the local hunt, because they have the hounds. They would euthanize the horse. The carcass then would be butchered and fed back into the hunt. So it's almost like I can say I can justify that, because hunting I was very passionate about that. I can kind of say, yeah, well, my horse has gone back to the hunt.
Oh yeah, that'd be a big thing.
And that's a big thing within the kind of horse community.
Yeah.
There has to be an end of life plan, or treat somewhere for horses to go for end of life. Unfortunately, that Shannon side place down there was like, you look at the beef industry, it's very well regulated, and that's really what we're looking for. A facility maybe like that's just that's run ethically and it's regulated.
Fit for purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's funny because, like, we have a lot of clients who are vets and they work in the meat factories, and like the thing, like the what they have to do in the meat factories to ensure like that everything is running smoothly and adhering to the standards, it's so high.
Yeah.
So that needs just to come, like, filter in. But just what Chris was saying about the hunt, and like, personally, that was always, like, for my horses, that's always my first choice. Failing that, then I will, have the vet do the job, but I'd much rather that they went to the hunt and did it, because I've seen it not go so well with the lethal injection. I'd much rather it's a much cleaner, quicker way.
Do you want to talk about that horse, Robbie, that we helped?
No,
Okay.
let's skip over that. But I do have a question, because you were talking about your horses. You've had horses getting sick in the past. Is there any particular herbal, like if a horse has a problem with its kidneys, it seeks out something?
Yes.
Is there?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because our dogs do eat long green grass at certain times of the year, and I don't have a clue, but they all do it.
Yeah.
So if it's the same with horses, please enlighten.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I've done a lot of study into like both that's a big area of interest of mine. So there's a thing called zoopharmacognosy, and it's all one word, but it actually works for dogs and it works for horses because they have what they call the VNO. Now we have it as embryo or as we have it as babies up on before we're born, up to 38 weeks, and then it disappears in the human. But the horses and the dogs have it. It's why they have such superior sense of smell. Now, I'm actually really doing probably not the best job of explaining this because if you go look up zoopharmacognosy, there's loads of people there. There's loads of information on it. But they can select for themselves what they need. So you'd often see horses eating like dandelions, because that's so good for the liver and the kidneys. Different herbs, chamomile, lots of different things. So there's zoopharmacognosy, which is really good. And then I have also studied with a woman called Sharon Bronsfeld, and she has a new website, and off the top of my head, I cannot remember the name, but if you type in the horse therapist, it will redirect you to her site, and that covers dogs as well, dogs and horses. And that's a lot of information about herbs, and so it's a huge area of interest of mine.
Again, we could do a whole podcast on it.
No, I could get
really
the people
quickly,
who know what they're doing.
VNO, is that what you
Yeah,
said? Is that
VNO.
smell?
It's a
vaso nasal.
Oh, now.
But what does it mean? Like, not the exact name, just what does it do?
Okay, so it's in when the horses or the dogs smell this, it signals the brain, right? So if it's kind of and kind of signals the brain to start a process. So say for example, I'd have a horse here and it might have a few anger issues. When that smells vanilla is very good for anger in horses. When that it can kind of trigger them and help them to release that tension or that kind of anxiety that they might have around that. But also, I mean, and there's loads of studies being done on this. I think elephants did it. They did a study on elephants in India where they all marched off and they ate they ate all these berries. But too many of these berries can be toxic. So then they all marched off to some other plant and then they ate that plant and it balanced it out for themselves. So that's what the dogs are doing when they're eating the grass. But
yeah, so I'll give you another example of that, Robbie, would be, for instance, I know Sarah know a lot more about this than I, but the likes of devil's claw, which would be a herb. So that would be used for kind of reducing inflammation. So I have that in a little a kind of droplet form. It's a little small little essential oils bottle. So I might put some of that in my hand, and I'd ask a horse to maybe lick it off my hand. So if they really wanted, if they had any sort of inflammation, and it's very interesting because if they wanted that through their digestive system, they would lick it with the front of their tongue. At the top of their tongue. And you feel the kind of roughness on the top of their tongue. But if they wanted it into their blood system, they take it in through the back of their tongue. And it's really interesting when you offer the likes of those essential oils to a horse, they will put it into their system how they need it. It's fascinating when you go into it.
That is, lads, I could talk to you two all day, genuinely.
Yeah, it's a whole different. And there's, as Chris, you probably said it there. There's probably 2 or 3 podcasts in there in different elements of that. I know we're kind of we're condensing it, but it's good to start at this point.
Yeah,
because it's a very good introduction for our world, I suppose. To
and I tell you how I know you know exactly what you're talking about is because you say something and move on, right? And it's nothing to you because you know it and understand it. And when we bring you back and question you on something, you're able to drill down straight away, make it simple for us to pick up on. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. I found I did a quick search there about the VNO. So it says here, and this is from dogsfirst.ie, but I just typed in VNO zoopharmacognosy, and actually the girl that we studied with, her name is Carly Hillier, and I think she was involved in writing this article, but it basically says dogs have a secondary olfactory organ which gives them the ability to scent far superior to our own. The organ, called the venonasal organ, there's my well-trained dogs, is located above the roof of the dog's mouth and enables them to seek out medicinal stuff within plants that they need to restore health. During the self-medication process, there is a number of pathways into the dog that into the body that the dog utilizes. So then again, it's ingestion, inhalation, topical application. Yeah. So that is I found that by just typing that in, and it was on dogsfirst.ie. So that might be like if someone was interested to go and have a look.
Absolutely. I think I've actually seen, you've probably seen the same, when you're out walking and people will have dogs out walking and they're over like eating at the grass I've seen their owners giving out, come out there, don't be, like literally.
Yeah.
Isn't that, and the dog is essentially probably looking at them saying, you do know I need to eat this,
Yeah.
Mental.
And it's funny because we're told, like, this would be the old wives' tales. It's like, oh, dogs will eat grass to make themselves sick. My dogs are always eating grass and they don't go around vomiting all the time. They obviously need it, they're always, they just nip the tops off the long grass,
Absolutely. Guys, it's been a real pleasure. We're going to have to do a part 2 to this. Most definitely. And the very, very best of luck with, if anyone wants to find you guys, where can we find you?
Super. So our website is www.Parelli Instructors. So that's PARELLIINSTRUCTORS -Ireland.com, or just type in Chris Brady Parelli or Sarah Brady Parelli. It'll come up.
We have Facebook, Instagram.
We even have TikTok. We have like 3 videos.
Yeah, but even if you Google Natural Horsemanship Ireland or Chris and Sarah Brady Natural Horsemanship or Parelli, so we're the only 2 licensed professionals in Ireland who teach this program, so we're quite easy to find if you're looking for us.
Absolutely. Look, I'm sure continued success, guys. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing success story. As I say, you're part of the evolution of both your sport and obviously it transcends into ours. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting us, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks. Over and out, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Are you still?